Hi, my name is Kiera Baldock, and I'm in American History 131 with Lucas Bruff, and this is my presentation on slavery in Brazil. In 1502, a fleet of Portuguese sailors set out to navigate to India in search of spices and other goods that they could use to trade, but instead landed in Brazil unintentionally. Upon landing here, they found a group of Brazilian natives that were very trusting and very nice to these new sailors, and they took advantage of these people and enslaved them and used them at their own expense, specifically in the production of sugar, which was a golden crop at this time. The Portuguese sailors mercilessly overworked these natives, and soon they all died out, either from grueling working conditions or European diseases that they had brought over. In this picture shown on the slide, there is a slave being whipped, which was one of the common practices of torture in this time. This was located in Lisbon, which was home to the largest concentration of Portugal's slaves. Many different practices were not unusual here. As seen in the quote below, chaining, whipping, and burning with hot wax were not unusual punishments of this time, and were practiced very often. After reading the two primary documents, I would like to discuss the questions. Common punishments in Brazil consisted of novenas, which were lashings across the backside for 9 days consecutively, as well as tourniquets, which is a device that for extremities, which involves tightening, and it wasn't pleasant. Hand and neck stocks, thumb screws, and irons. The religious presence was not allowed because it was thought to undermine the authority of the master or the slave owner, and they couldn't have this because if the slave owner was supposed to have all of the power, and if there were other things that the slaves could believe in or focus on, then they believed that they were not having full respect from the slaves. On whether or not I believed slaves were helpless individuals, I am about 50-50. I do believe that they were not necessarily helpless in some aspects, like the fact that they had rebellious streaks. They could think for themselves, and they did plan certain things against their masters, which in turn they were punished for, which I don't find to be completely helpless. But they were helpless in the fact that they were brought to another country against their will and enslaved and forced to work under unhealthy, inhumane conditions. So it's kind of a pro and con controversial topic for me. When comparing Brazilian slavery to the feudalism in Europe, I believe that they were similar, whereas the slave owners were over the slaves, just like the serfs were under the lords and the kings and other rulers. It was a matter of power and social rank, and I feel like that's the main thing that made them the most similar. Here I have another picture, and this is of the popular religious dance ceremony known as Kalendu, not to be confused with Candomblé, which I will go into depth a little later. The two were somewhat similar, but there's not much to say that they were the same thing. All that was said about Kalendu was that it was a type of dance ceremony that was practiced among the African slaves, and there's also quotes that say that some of the slave owners actually permitted this as it kept them content, or not prevented them from getting rowdy, I suppose. And a quote from the text that reiterates the fact that it was not similar or not somewhat similar to Candomblé. It is tempting to imagine Kalindu ceremonies through reference to the modern Afro-Brazilian religion Candomblé, but they were probably not identical. So again, reiterating that it was probably similar, but there's no definite proof. I'd like to end with my explanation on slavery in modern Brazil, the way it has shaped the country's culture in present day. It continues to be rich in African culture due to the large amount of African slaves shipped there between 1502 and 1867, and most of the population is of African descent, and the culture can be seen throughout the country. The Church of São Francisco Convent, which still stands today, was built by freed African Americans as well as slaves, and is said to be the pride of Salvador, and that is a result of slavery in past Brazil. Sugar is still one of the main exports in Brazil, which can be traced back to, again, the 1500s when Brazilian slavery first started. And capoeira, which is a dance / martial art that was practiced in the 1500s when the slaves were first brought over as a sort of relief and self-defense for the slaves, and they were disguising it as a dance so as to not get in trouble by their masters, and it's still practiced today and seen as an art. This concludes my presentation. Have a good day.